Hi, this is Jen Barney from the Toasty Meringue. Today I am so excited to share with you the salted caramel truffle recipe. Jill and I have worked really hard on this. We've made it multiple times, we've tweaked it every step of the way, and we want to share this with the world because it's that good. This recipe is truly a gem, and I'm so excited to start showing you how to make it. First, let's make sure you have the right equipment. Anytime you make candy, it's very important to make sure you have the right equipment because things move along fast and you want to be prepared. Make sure you have a nice large pot, one that's very clean and with very tall sides on it. You need a candy thermometer, and you also need a scale. Let's go to the ingredients now. This recipe calls for 2 1/4 cups of heavy cream, 1 1/2 teaspoons of vanilla, 1 1/2 cups of brown rice syrup or corn syrup. I do prefer the brown rice syrup for this recipe. It has a nice yeasty and nutty undertones to it that I think work really well with this truffle. But if what you have is corn syrup in your pantry, by all means, that's a great substitution. It also calls for 600 grams of sugar, 180 grams of butter. Divide that into 2 equal portions, 2 teaspoons of salt, and approximately 3 cups of a good quality chocolate. The chocolate that I like to use in my home is either Callebaut or Valrhona, but those are really high quality chocolates, and sometimes it's hard for at-home cooks to get their hands on that. If you would like to use a good quality chocolate, what I would recommend is Ghirardelli. You can usually find that at most supermarkets, and they have a 60% cocoa bittersweet baking chocolate that I think would work really well. You do want a chocolate with a higher cocoa percentage, like around 60. Sometimes you can find them in like 30%. 30 to 70% I think would work really well for this recipe. Let's begin. First, you're going to want to take your 600 grams of sugar and add it to your large stock pot. Next, we'll add your 1 1/2 cups of brown rice syrup. Next, you're going to take your spatula and mix those 2 sugars together until they're nice and uniform. When you look down at your pot, you're going to notice that there's some sugar granules stuck to the sides of your pan, and those are bad because they'll eventually form crystallization within your sugar, and you want to knock those down and get those away. So what I like to do is take some water with my hands and take my fingers and wipe down the sides with those wet fingers, and I rotate the pan all the way through so all that sugar is knocked down, and that's the fastest way that I found. Some people like to use a brush dipped in water to knock those down, and you can do that as well. Now it's time to get this pot to the stove. You're going to want to heat this sugar mixture up to 320 degrees. Meanwhile, let's prepare the rest of your ingredients. You have your 2 1/4 cups of heavy cream. Add that to 1 1/2 teaspoons of vanilla and set that aside. Also, while your sugar is heating up to 320 degrees, we're going to prepare our 9 by 9 square pan. And I just take lots of butter, smear it around until all surfaces are coated generously. Right now, our temperature is at 320 degrees for our sugar. So what I'm doing is I'm slowly pouring in that heavy cream and vanilla mixture. This mixture will bubble up really tall, which is why we wanted those nice tall sides on that pan. So just be careful when that happens for the first time, because it's unexpected when it happens. I also added in my salt and half of that butter, and I'm going to mix it up, and I'm just going to let it heat again until it reaches 253 degrees, which might take about 10 minutes or so. I'd like to share with you a tip I have on how to test for when your sugar's done without the use of a thermometer. Sometimes at-home thermometers can be not as accurate, and this is a great way to offset that. So all you do is you just take your 2 bowls, one with ice right underneath it, and you're going to flash cool like a teaspoon of that caramel sauce. And you'll be able to see how thick it is. And what you're going to look for is when the caramel is thick enough that it starts to ball up. And that's when you know, if you see my spoon right now, when it starts to look like that thickness, that's when you know it's ready. It's right around that 240, 245 degree softball temperature. Alright, we're done. This sugar has come up a couple more degrees. Right now it's at 253, and I'm adding that second amount of butter. And we're ready to pour into the pan. I'm using a 9 by 9 inch square pan. It works well for this recipe, but use what you have at home if you don't have that size. Let's get these caramels out of the pan. What I like to do is just place my 9 by 9 inch pan in another pan of really hot water, and it doesn't take more than maybe 3 or 4 seconds, and it's that water just heats that bottom up enough that it will just plop right out. Cutting these caramels is definitely the easiest step. Do whatever shape or size that fits the occasion that you're making them for. Here I'm doing very small pieces, maybe 1.5 by 1 inch rectangles. And one small tip I have is just to have a piece of parchment with a pan underneath it right next to you. That way when you're done cutting the truffles, you can pick it up and move it to wherever it needs to go. Melting your chocolate is very easy. You just make yourself a double boiler. It's very easy. You have a pan of hot water boiling and another pan, another bowl on top of it. You just simply pour half the amount of chocolate that you have into there. Stir it often. You don't want that chocolate to scorch if it gets too hot. Keep an eye on it, and once it's all melted, you just pour that second half of chocolate into it. Take it off of the heat and let that cold chocolate slowly melt in so it's nice and smooth. It's all melted. From there, you're going to want to take it down a little bit cooler. If you dip them right away, the chocolate's not going to set up quite right. So what I like to do is just set it in the fridge for a couple minutes, stir it. What you're looking for is it to be cooler than your body temperature, around 89 degrees. But just like stick your finger in it. If it feels like it's warmer than your body temp, take it a little bit lower. But once that chocolate is cool enough, you're ready to dip. And that's probably the funnest part. I use a fork when I dip my truffles. And when I have the caramel on my fork and I dip it into the chocolate, I do raise up that fork just to the surface of the chocolate, and I like to tap it onto the surface. And what that is going to do is it's going to pull some of that excess chocolate off of your truffle, and it's not going to be as thickly coated. So see me tapping it right there. And then from there I just put it onto my parchment paper. Before the chocolate sets, you can garnish it with whatever you'd like. Here in these pictures I have using cocoa nibs. Sea salt would be fabulous. Any type of garnish would work really well. And you'll see on these pictures, I didn't spend too much time cleaning up the edges of these truffles, but if you wanted a more professional look, you would just take a hot knife and clean up some of that bottom footing that's on those pictures that you can see. Thank you for listening. This is Jen Barney. I'm so glad that you spent time learning how to make these beautiful caramel truffles. Take care.